وكتاب مسطور في رق منشور والبيت المعمور والسقف المرفوع والبحر المسجور.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. My name is Hassan Chaudhry and welcome to Ummah Talk. Tonight we're discussing values, global values. As the war on terror has continued to be framed in terms of values, we discuss what those values are and the implications for the Muslim community at home and abroad. It's been discussed at the very highest levels, and we have a selection of clips for you that show us what's being said.
I think it is an interconnected world, and that's why it's important that we all work together. Interfaith, interreligious work is very important, and I think respecting every individual and everyone's right for self-determination is also very important. The danger comes when you try to impose your values onto someone else. That's when you get Iraq. Because when you try to impose your type of democracy and your type of values in a country that has more history than the whole of West put together, and then you try to force the people in there to do certain things with lies and deception, then obviously you get the result that is tragically taking place in Iraq when there's almost a civil war happening there now.
But it also has to be done by mobilizing that moderate majority within the Muslim community to go into the community and take these people head on, not just in terms of their methods, but in terms of their ideas, in terms of their sense of grievance against the West, the whole basis of that ideology, because this is a global ideology that we're fighting.
If I'm right in assessing what Tony Blair has been saying for a while, he's talking about modernity in terms of Islam, for instance. Well, I happen to believe that Islam is probably one of the most modern religions in the world today. And I think that, yes, there are a few people who may misinterpret Islam because of their political ideologies. But you know, our Western values of civil liberties, human rights, and even the telling of the truth was so important, which is not taking place right now during Tony Blair's premiership. And even on, when we were told about weapons of mass destruction, and we were told about 45-minute claim and lots of other things in terms of terrorism and international terrorism, and the way the whole thing, the whole attack that took place on Afghanistan, that there is so many Taliban that we need to fight, and that we were going to stop this evil drugs coming through to the United Kingdom, and we were going to liberate women. Well, none of that has happened. Frankly, I don't think that he's got any time left for lectures now. I think it's time for Tony Blair to wrap up and just take his holiday somewhere.
Our tolerance is part of what makes Britain Britain. So conform to it or don't come here. We don't want the hate mongers, whatever their race, religion, or creed. And if you come here lawfully, we welcome you. If you are permitted to stay here permanently, you become an equal member of our community and become one of us.
Yes, we must demand from everyone in this country that they obey our laws. But loyalty is not just about the law. Loyalty is about giving people something to believe in. So we've got to inspire loyalty by building a Britain that every one of our citizens can believe in. And we must, each of us, do all we can to bring down those barriers that make that dream more difficult to believe.
What we really need is respect of everyone, and we need same standards, whether we are dealing with East Timor or whether we are dealing with Kashmir, whether we are dealing with those people who are held in our prisons because they are IRA members or they are Al-Qaeda members. A terrorist is a terrorist, and we should not relate them to any religion, but we should deal with them because of their actions.
Welcome back. Now, with me in the studio to discuss these comments and the current topic, I have two guests with me. First, I have Johann Hari, a columnist for The Independent. Welcome.
Hi, Hassan.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we also have Sajjad Khan, who's editor of New Civilization magazine. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Hassan.
Okay. Now, having looked at those clips, and especially what Blair's been saying, I've got to ask, doesn't he have enough to worry about domestically, Johann?
Well, we need a much better choice than a choice between George Bush or Osama bin Laden. We need a much better choice between Blair allied with Bush and, the Taliban allied with Osama bin Laden, and I think, unfortunately, although I think the content of what Blair says is right a lot of the time about how we need to defend universal values, he's right that this is not a clash between civilizations. This is a clash about what civilization should mean. Unfortunately, he represents part of not a coalition of the willing, but increasingly a coalition of the drilling that is motivated, I'm afraid, not by the noble things he talks about, but by far more base things. When you've allowed British airspace to be used to render innocent people who are being taken to be tortured, or indeed guilty people who are being taken to be tortured, you shouldn't torture anyone. When you've been part of an attack on Fallujah that surrounded a civilian city, forbade anyone between the age of 18 and 60 from leaving, and then used chemical weapons on it, I think it becomes very hard to start talking about those values without just sounding like a hypocrite. But I also think you have to, so while he certainly doesn't, I'm afraid, because I think he does say the right things a lot of the time, doesn't represent those values. I'm afraid we also have to be careful that fundamentalists, Islamic fundamentalists or any other kind of religious fundamentalist, equally are a great menace to those values, and in some instances an even greater menace. For example, I know you're a member of Hizb Tahrir, and Hizb Tahrir, I believe, is as great a menace to those values. If I can just list some of the things that they believe. Article 109 of their constitution dictates that women should be segregated and forced to wear jilbab, whether they want to or not. Well, I'm in favour of women being allowed to live whatever kind of life they want to live. If a woman wants to wear a veil, that's fine by me. If a woman wants to wear, as long as she's genuinely choosing it without being pressured to. If a woman wants to wear PVC hot pants, that's fine by me. It's up to her. Article 7 of the Hizb Tahrir constitution says that apostates should be executed. So if you're a Muslim and you want to change your religion, they believe you should be killed. Also, where I live in Brick Lane, we had a festival recently, Hizb Tahrir were giving out leaflets. They said Muslims shouldn't attend because the festival features, these were their words, alcohol, dancing and free mixing. Well, I think all of those things are quite good. And if people want to choose them, if someone doesn't want to choose to drink alcohol, that's fine. If someone wants to choose not to mix with women, that's fine. If someone wants to choose not to dance, that's fine. But I believe it is essential that people have those freedoms. And an organisation that is opposed to those freedoms for Muslims and for other people, I'm afraid cannot claim to speak in the name of freedom.
Okay, then I've got to let Sajjad back in here to address these comments.
Well, answering the specific question, I think Tony Blair is actually creating a false choice. In that sense, I agree with Johann. It isn't a choice between tyranny and Western benign values. There's actually a choice between secular liberal fundamentalism, as espoused by George Bush and Tony Blair. And actually, this is the old adage, the old colonial mentality, we know best, white, to paraphrase Animal Farm, white man good, black man bad, Western values good, Islamic values bad, secularism good, caliphate bad. Tony Blair's right, Iraq and Afghanistan, didn't predate 9/11, but Western occupation of the Middle East predated 9/11. The West, 9/11 wasn't the reason why Tony Blair's in Iraq, it was the excuse to be in Iraq. Because for hundreds of years we've seen the same tired old recipe. And a mentality that says at the end of the day our values, our opinions, our principles are the best principles and we won't listen to anyone else. And what we're seeing is a growing culture in Britain and in parts of Europe where they're forcing those values down the throats of everyone, not through debate or argument or through discourse, forcing them down through their throat through neo-McCarthyism tactics on campuses and through other means and through legislation. And what we're seeing abroad is those values being spread by the sword. They always often accused Islam being spread by the sword. What we're seeing now is not spread by the sword, but by the F-16.
But let me ask you this question quickly. Do you